Does gyro need aim assist? No. All right, thanks for watching. That's everything for now. Okay, look, that joke was just too easy to make because it's true. The entire point of using gyro is that you don't need aim assist. Unless you want to get super technical and say that Excel is a kind of aim assist, which it's not, it's more of an aim stabilizer, then the simple answer is no. Gyro does not need aim assist, and hopefully at the end of this video, you'll understand why. So in this video, I'm going to go ahead and break down what I call the aim assist paradox, because aim assist is one of those things that has always been in a weird space. It is somehow powerful and weak at the same time. Powerful because it's literally the game aiming for you, but weak because you can only use it with a joystick. So to begin, let me break down the differences between joystick aiming and gyro. Both gyro and mouse control the mouse on the screen by essentially doing the same thing. They measure the difference between distance traveled over time. A mouse does this two-dimensionally between two images, and a gyro does this based on angular rotation. And so if you think about it, a mouse is a motion controller, a less immersive one, because it's converting 2D translation to 3D rotation, where a gyro is converting 3D rotation to 3D rotation. That's why gyro is more immersive. So when we're properly synced up, you should think of gyro aiming as aiming with space. And what I mean by that is, regardless of how fast you rotate your controller, well, unless you rotate your controller past like 2,000 degrees somehow, as long as you're rotating your controller within a reasonable speed, you can expect to land at the same direction 99.9% of the time. So if you rotate your controller quickly 90 degrees, you're going to be pointing 90 degrees. If you rotate it slowly 90 degrees, you're still going to be at 90 degrees because you're converting space to space. You are aiming with space. Joysticks, on the other hand, aim with time, because a joystick determines how fast your camera is going to spin based on how far you're deflecting the joystick. So when you tilt the joystick a little bit, you're going to be rotating at a constant speed forever until you return the joystick back to the center. And at max deflection, this means that joysticks have a speed limit, because sensitivity on a joystick doesn't actually refer to sensitivity. It refers to speed. It's a speed limit. It's how fast your camera can spin in the game at max deflection, because joysticks aim with time. So when you play games with a joystick, you're not building up spatial muscle memory the same way you would with gyro or mouse. Instead, you're building up temporal muscle memory, basically turning shooters into a kind of rhythm game, because you're practicing holding the joystick just long enough to face the general correct direction of your target. And this means, at its absolute fundamental core, joystick players are playing a completely different game from gyro and mouse. And if joystick players were forced to only use the joystick, they would be at a massive disadvantage. And so of course, that's why aim assist exists. Although aim assist isn't just one singular thing. There's actually a bunch of different types of aim assist that devs try to balance, but obviously haven't been able to solve because, well, I'm making this video. So let me go ahead and break down the aim assist types that you'll actually see in multiplayer games. So in no specific order, the first kind of aim assist that you can run into in multiplayer games is aim snapping. Depending on how large of a cone the devs have set up, as long as you're facing the general direction of your target, when you aim down sights, your aim will snap to the center of the target, or towards it in this example. The next kind of assist is slowdown. Now, all this does is it lowers the sensitivity of the joystick, or the rotation speed, when the crosshair is near the target. And this is done for two reasons. One, it's really easy to overshoot a target on joystick. And 2, it helps give joystick players an easier time with micro adjustments once they're actually trying to aim at the target. On top of the slowdown, however, joystick players are also given magnetism, or rotation assist. And it does exactly what it sounds like. It magnetizes your crosshair to the target that you're aiming at. Now, the strength of this assist is usually tied to movement speed. The slower you move, the stronger the assist, and the faster, the weaker it is. And that's why a trick a lot of joystick players like to do is that they'll deliberately keep the dead zone on their left stick really low, so that way their character in-game is always moving, and this basically ensures that they always have turning assist. While slightly different, there is something else called sticky aim, which essentially does the exact same thing. Basically, once you're actually aiming at a target, sticky aim ensures that once you're actually on target, that your aim stays on target. Here's a more extreme example in a single player game. Even though I'm trying to move my crosshair away from the target, sticky aim keeps me locked on. The last kind of assist that you might run into in multiplayer games is bullet magnetism. All this does is it makes the hitboxes bigger. So instead of aiming directly at the target, you can just aim near it, and your bullets will still hit the target. The finals doesn't seem to have this. And something to keep in mind is that whenever servers compensate for latency, that in of itself can look like bullet magnetism, but it isn't. Okay, now that you know what different aim assists look like, let me show you why you don't need it. The first run is with aim assist, and the second is without it. I don't know how well this comes across in the footage, but when aim assist is on, I basically don't have to think about tracking at all, or wide flicks. Aiming in general just feels way more comfortable, because it's easier. In fact, it took me way less tries to get this run with aim assist on than it did with it off. So yeah, this is not something you want to play against in a multiplayer game. But that's not to say that aim assist is purely advantageous, because there are some very specific scenarios where aim assist can actually be a downside. Aim assist only works on one target at a time, so in a 1v1 scenario, it's a huge advantage. But when there's more than one target on the screen for you to choose from, aim assist is going to make that choice for you, and this can be extremely annoying, especially in multiplayer games. Because sometimes you're not even trying to aim at a target, and another one will run in front of you, and the aim assist will kick in, throwing off your aim. So in 1v1 scenarios, aim assist is OP, but when you actually have to make decisions, it can really hold you back. So for the next part of the video, I'm going to explain to you how I think I would try to balance aim assist. But to do that, I need to get a little pseudoscientific. So if we want to try and balance aim assist, then we need to try and identify exactly where it's giving players advantages. And to try and do that, I've made a spreadsheet. So what I'm doing here is I've overcomplicated the simple act of aiming by breaking it down into 12 steps. So first, you need to plan, or you need to choose what target it is you're going to be shooting at. In this case, it's a red circle. Next, you need to scan, basically just looking around the game world for anything that might stand out. And so, of course, after scanning, you detect something. Did something move, or is there a red object on the screen? If so, next, you need to identify it. Is it the red circle that you planned for, or is it something else? And if there's more than one red circle on the screen, then you need to choose which one it is you want to shoot. So this first green section here basically represents the planning stage of the aiming process. Next, in red, is the actual aiming. And so the next step is to acquire, or just move your crosshair onto the target. If the target is moving, then you need to track it. You need to predict where the target will be based on its relative velocity. And if you're using a projectile weapon, you'll need to do some further calculations to actually lead your shot. And if the target changes directions, then you need to react to that change in direction. And the speed at which you can do this is limited by your actual reaction speed. And once you think you're ready to engage, you pull the trigger. Now, did you hit the target or did you miss? Either way, you need to learn and recalibrate, and then repeat the cycle back at acquire. And so if we repeat this loop here, this basically represents all the stuff that you're doing in order to account for recoil control. Now, the reason why I've made this list is because I want to try and add a somewhat quantifiable means of representing cognitive load. And all cognitive load means is how much thinking your brain is actually doing. How much stress is your brain actually under? Also, real quick, I didn't list this stuff here. I had GPT write that for me since I know nothing about the brain. I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm just an ideas guy. But anyways. All right, so coming over to this side of the spreadsheet, here's the system I've come up with to try and attribute a numerical value to cognitive load. So here's how it works. A 1 represents your brain in a relaxed state. This would be you just mindlessly doom scrolling or something. Your brain is pretty much off and you're not thinking at all. A 2 would represent basic quick calculations or muscle memory. So think of 1 plus 1. It's 2. Did you answer 2 because your brain actually calculated it, or did you answer 2 out of muscle memory? It's kind of a mix of both, right? So a 2 is basic simple calculations or muscle memory. A 3, on the other hand, is complex calculations. This is your brain running on maximum overdrive. Like you are actually thinking and you have to put effort into solving a complicated equation. Like, what's the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? And so, by using these 3 simple numbers, I've come up with this scoring system here. So as a baseline, let's just say you're completely relaxed. You're doom scrolling or something. You're not thinking whatsoever. Then your total score would be like a 12. Because you're just relaxed, you're not thinking. So next, these are the scores that I've come up with for manual aiming. So if you're aiming a gyro or a mouse without any assists, these are the numbers that I landed on. So for planning, I gave this a 2 because you have to know what kind of target it is you're shooting in a game and keep that in the back of your head. In a competitive environment, I've given scan a 3 because you are on high octane, high alert for anything and everything that could be an enemy player. So I've given this a 3. Actually detecting things moving is reactionary. It's muscle memory, so I've given this a 2. If you've played a game for long enough, then identifying an enemy player would also be a 2, because that's something you do on muscle memory. Now, if you're in a situation where there's more than one enemy player in front of you, you need to think real carefully about which one you're going to shoot. And on top of that, you could also think of prioritize as just general decision making, like should you run away or do something else. So I've given this a 3. So next, what should be obvious is that for all of the actual aiming stages, these are all a 3, because you were doing every step of the aiming process manually. You are not getting any help. So acquiring a target is a 3. Tracking it is especially a 3 because that's prediction. Leading is also a 3 because that's another form of prediction. And reacting is also a 3. Now, I've left engage at a 1 because engage is literally just pulling the trigger. However, this can be a 2, especially for us gyro players, because it depends on what button it is you're actually using to shoot. If you're using a controller with really hard bumpers or really long triggers or something, then that's an extra layer of thing that you have to think about and account for when you're actually trying to shoot something. This is why you want to use the softest buttons you can when you use gyro, because thinking about how you're pressing a button is not something you want on your mind when you're playing a game. All right, and last, evaluate and recalibrate are both the 2, because these are kind of reactionary things that you just do automatically on the fly anyways. So the total I've landed on for manual aiming, whether it's gyro or mouse, is a 29. And again, this is all just arbitrary pseudoscientific numbers, but I wanted some way to try and quantify cognitive load. And so when you, the player, are doing every step of the aiming process, that's a lot of cognitive processing that your brain has to do. And the whole point of aim training is to try and push the actual aiming stages of this down to a 2, down into your muscle memory. Because hopefully with enough training, you can push each step of the aiming process down into muscle memory, giving you an advantage over other players who are under higher cognitive load. So next, in this section here, I'm rating each aim assist type individually, because each kind of aim assist affects different parts of the aiming process differently. So starting off with friction, there's no real change whatsoever to planning and scanning. However, detecting targets can be easier, because sometimes you're not even looking for a target, and you may notice your sensitivity randomly drop when you're moving your crosshair across a bush. And I would say that that is kind of an advantage and makes detecting enemy players easier. So I've given this a 1. And there's no change to identify or prioritize, because that is still on you, the player. As for target acquisition, friction literally exists to make acquiring targets easier. So I've given this a 2. At medium to long range, the lower sensitivity also helps you track targets a little easier. So I've given this a 2. If you only had friction and no other assists, leading targets would actually still be a 3. And actually, by that logic, I'm realizing that react should actually stay a 3, because you as a player would still have to react and flick the joystick the opposite direction when the target changes directions. So yeah, I'll just change that right now real quick. And engage, evaluate, and recalibrate all stay the same, because aim assist doesn't really do anything here. So for friction, and just friction by itself, would bring a player's cognitive load down to a 26. Which means if you have a super skilled joystick player, they should be having a more comfortable time than an inexperienced gyro or mouse player. And because their cognitive load is lower, this means they're free to sort of reallocate that brain processing to other areas. Okay, so next is sticky aim. And again, plan and scan don't change. And just like friction, I've given this a 1, because just like friction, it literally sticks to enemy players. So detecting becomes easier. Identify and prioritize are still on you, so that stays the same. And so obviously acquiring targets becomes easier, and tracking targets becomes especially easier, because now the game is tracking for you. So in my opinion, that brings the cognitive load down to a 1. Now, leading shots, however, stays a 3, because sometimes you don't actually want the computer aiming for you, especially if its tracking is literally perfect, because then that actually makes leading shots impossible. So weirdly enough, in my opinion, leading targets stays at a 3. Reacting, on the other hand, drops to a 1, because depending on how aggressive the sticky aim is, you now literally don't need to react at all. The sticky aim is going to keep your crosshair on the target, and on top of that, it's going to do it at superhuman speeds, because when we're aiming manually, our reaction is obviously based on our reaction speed. Sticky aim and most aim assists that I've seen are all extremely magnetic. They will stay on the target the instant it changes directions, and that is a huge advantage and is honestly probably the source of what makes aim assist feel so unfair. And so for sticky aim, the total comes out to a 23. Rotation assist is very similar to sticky aim, with the only difference really being in reaction. Now, I've left rotation assist at a 2 here because, in theory, it should disable if a target changes directions quickly enough. It's sticky aim that keeps your crosshair on target, not necessarily rotation assist. So I've left this at a 2, leaving the total to a 24, just slightly higher than sticky aim. Alright, and so next is snap aiming. Again, plan and scan don't change, and I've actually decided to leave detect at a 2 because in order to actually snap onto a target, you have to know that it's there, and snap aim in of itself doesn't actually give you any information as to whether there's a target in front of you. So you as a player still have to detect that the target is there for you to then snap onto. Now, for all of these aim assist types, I've left prioritization at 3 because you do have a degree of decision making in choosing that you would like to aim at a certain target. But like I've shown earlier, aim assist can make those decisions for you and can actually actively sabotage you. And so just to be generous, I've pretty much left all of these at a 3. So as for actually aiming, obviously snap aiming makes acquiring a target super easy, because the game is literally acquiring the target for you. Because snap aiming is only target acquisition, this means, in theory, tracking and leading shouldn't change. Although I have put react at a 2, because if you just constantly aim down sights and aim out of sights really quickly, then potentially snap aim could be used to stay on target. And the last score stayed the same, leaving the total to 26. Now, I've separated bullet magnetism from the rest of these because you won't see bullet magnetism a whole lot in shooters nowadays in multiplayer games. Well, at least hopefully. But if magnetism were used, then it would make the aiming stages a lot easier because you're literally aiming at larger targets. So acquiring a larger target is easier, so that's a 2. Tracking a larger target is easier, that's a 2. Leading a target becomes easier, and even reacting to changes in directions kind of becomes easier, because if the hitbox is bigger, that means even if you're a little slow, you'll potentially still be on target for longer as the target is changing directions. So bullet magnetism comes out to a 25, in my opinion. And so the last category here is auto aim. This is full-blown cheating. And so, being as fair as possible, if we really think about it, there still is a little bit of cognitive processing happening when you cheat, because even a cheater still needs to plan and they still need to scan. Although scanning obviously becomes really easy when you have big red hitboxes all over your screen. So I've dropped that to a 2. And I've actually left detection at a 2 because, well, the cheater needs to react to the big red boxes on their screen. Everything else, however, becomes a 1 because there is 0 skill required in this scenario. There is 0 cognitive load here. All the hacker has to do is aim and shoot. So in a way, this number here kind of represents why cheaters cheat. They enjoy that easy breezy experience. And this kind of also explains why it's actually possible to beat cheaters. Because even if you have a robot doing everything for you, you still need a game plan, and if your positioning is terrible, you can still get taken out by a player with good aim, who happens to be in your aimbot's blind spot, because an aimbot can only aim at one target at a time. So in order to actually beat cheaters, you basically have to wait them out and try to shoot them when they're shooting someone else. In fact, I realize what I'm describing here is literally the design principles behind Soldier 76 in Overwatch, and other auto-aim mechanics in different games. From a game design perspective, you're giving players a release valve. The auto-aim ultimate feels like an ultimate because it's relieving so much cognitive stress. It's like a stress release valve, freeing up cognitive load for you to think about your positioning and who you should be pointing the auto aim at. All right, so now that I've got all this number pseudoscience out the way, I feel like I can identify the two areas where aim assist gives players the most advantage. And it's sticky aim and turning assist with reaction speed and acquisition. Also snap aiming with acquisition. But weirdly enough, snap aiming actually does seem to balance itself out. And I am trying to be as generous as possible with these numbers here, by the way, because again, this ain't hard science. So if acquiring and reacting are the two big problem areas, how could we fix this? How could we try to increase a player's cognitive load so that way reacting becomes a 2 and acquiring becomes a 3? And so on, because I think numbers like this would be more fair, at the very least more fair to a skilled mouse or gyro player. Well, I do have an idea, but I'm not a programmer. I have no idea if my idea is even possible. But here we go.
You can see several markers on the screen. The mouse targeting cursor that your plane follows, the targeting crosshair that shows where the main armament of the plane is aimed, and the lead angle indicator, which is the most important, as it shows where you need to shoot to hit the opponent. You will be unable to hit your opponent if you move the targeting cursor onto them with your mouse. The rounds will fly in the direction that the crosshair is aimed. You will also be unable to hit a moving object if you move the targeting crosshair directly onto it, as the target will move while the rounds fly forward and the burst will miss. To hit the opponent, put the targeting crosshair over the lead angle indicator of the enemy plane and fire.
The fact that games have been capable of even creating the target leading target has always been interesting to me, because it tells me that it's possible to keep track of what direction a target is going and predict where it will be if it continues on its path. So I was thinking, what if we use the target leading target as a way to actually enable aim assist? So for aim assist to even turn on, a joystick player would have to deflect the joystick in the same direction as the target leading target. So in this War Thunder example, deflecting your joystick to the left in the same direction that the target is going would enable aim assist. But if the plane turns the exact opposite direction to the right, then aim assist gets disabled, forcing joystick players to reacquire the target manually. You wouldn't have that superhuman magnetic tracking anymore. Reaction inputs would now be more on the player. And if there's two targets on the screen, like the example I showed earlier, well, if a target is moving the opposite direction that you're deflecting the joystick, then aim assist doesn't enable. And this could potentially actually improve target prioritization. So if anything, it would improve the joystick experience, potentially. Look, I'm just an ideas guy. I have no clue if this is possible. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if there's already a game out there that's tried to do something like this. But I don't know. I'm just tired of playing against overpowered aim assist. Because, like I said earlier, joystick players are objectively playing an entirely different game. And everyone has the right to play games however they want, especially single-player games. You want to cheat and hack in single-player games? Knock yourself out. It's a single-player game. Who cares? But when your fun gets in the way of my fun, then that's no fun. And trying to balance two inputs that are completely different, objectively completely different, it's just going to be an infinite unsolvable problem. It's kind of like the shoreline paradox, if you think about it. You tweak one setting here, change setting there, and players inevitably adapt. And things remain unbalanced to a point where either one input becomes overpowered or the other one becomes weaker, or vice versa, because it's impossible to make a circle the same as a square. Like, there's a reason why the language joystick players use and controller pros use is that joystick aiming is all about learning how to abuse aim assist. That's literally what they say. Now, if a change like this could be made, there's also the problem that I can guarantee a large majority of joystick players will hate it, because it's just human nature to have a negative reaction to something that changes something that you're used to. Especially when game devs like to do big changes in big patches overnight, because that's how you get the instantaneous outcry of people telling you to revert things back to the way they were. If you actually want to update your game to a new state, then you have to do it gradually over time. You know, the frog in the boiling pot of water thing. So even if this type of change were possible, and if it were implemented, a large portion of gamers will probably immediately notice and hate it. So yeah, I don't really know how to end off this video because aim assist is always just going to be there, especially because of accessibility. Like, any games that have aim assist in them already are never going to remove it because people love their aim assist. The only way to actually balance aim assist, in my opinion, is if it's never there to begin with. And no gaming company in our modern time is ever going to do that, because not catering to the largest demographic, joystick players, is just an immediate death sentence to your player count. So yeah, I don't know. There's a whole lot of rambling here at the end, because I'm not really sure what I'm trying to say. I guess what I'm trying to say is that in order for more people to adopt Gyro, you not only have to convince them that it's just as good as mouse, but that it's also better than aim assist, which is a problem because a lot of people already consider aim assist to be better than mouse. It's also especially hard because you're also asking people to give up something that they're already used to in favor of something else that they're going to have to work at from the ground up. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what the best course of action is for all of this, but hopefully, if it's possible, tweaking aim assist further so it's more fair might be a good direction to start. All right, that's pretty much everything. I'll catch you on the next one.